Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. Antoine here, and welcoming you to another episode of Help for the Guildless. Now, I have one singular question for you. Do you know what the Oppression Olympics are? Well, if you don't, I will put in the link in the description a very wonderful video by Shuon Head that explains what the Oppression Olympics really are. But, with that being said, I have found an article that is the stupidest thing I have ever heard. Just from the title itself gives you all you need to know about the reality of what happened. You see, this person, Jordan Belamire, did not just win the gold of the Oppression Olympics. Oh no, she goes far beyond gold, past platinum, going past diamond to fucking kryptonite. I know that's a real thing in the world. I'm talking about the fabled kryptonite that is from a far-off planet that destroyed itself and is now here on it glows green. Anyway, the title of this article is My First Virtual Reality Groping. The fact that sentence was strung together and is something that I thought I would never say out loud to people. It makes my head spin. This is not a video I'm going to do a response to. No, I'm actually going to be reacting to the article. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but I am going to read a bit of the fun. Now, like I said, the name of this person is Jordan Belamire, and Jordan doesn't necessarily have the most honest opinion of what's going on. This is more of a puff piece, opinionated claptrap, and you'll see when I start reading it. So, let's get started, shall we? Strap in, grab yourself the strongest whiskey you can find, and, well, try not to shoot yourself. Last week, I was groped in virtual reality. Did you know that could happen? I didn't, but now I'm all the wiser. No, you're none too wiser to the fact that you wrote a sentence that does not make sense. It goes back to the whole thing about mods in GTA 5 Online, making it so they could sexually assault characters in virtual reality, and it being considered something real. This is virtual reality. This is a game. While visiting my brother-in-law last week, we decided to check out his HTC Vive, a virtual reality system. My husband and I stood in his home in Redwood City on an idyllic 80-degree day, with 3 of us taking turns on the Vive. Well, good for you. I'm glad you decided to share. It was my turn next. I glanced one last time around the room before strapping on the massive headset and into a world more beautiful than I could have imagined. Turning around 360 degrees, I reveled in the snowy medieval fortress of a game called QuiVr, where you play as an archer shooting down the Walking Dead. Of course, you play as someone killing the Walking Dead. The Vive is actually very new in its development, and the problem is a lot of these games are basically on-rail shooters, or tower defense games, or some form of exploring game that you move around with the joysticks. It's not necessarily the greatest as of yet. It's going to get there eventually, but I have some trepidations about it. Anyway, let me continue. After some instruction, I found my groove with the gameplay. My bow and arrow strong taut, I let an arrow fly and it punctured a demon right through the skull. Nailed Never had I experienced virtual reality that felt so real. I was smitten. I never wanted to leave this world. To complete the reality of my experience, my brother-in-law directed me to the top of the highest tower in the game. Now walk off the ledge, he suggested. Wanting her to... We've all experienced that, playing Super Mario Brothers for the very first time. Oh, down that pit there's a secret passage that goes to the final level if you just jump right off. That's kind of initially what this man is trying to do to his sister-in-law. Anyway. Might as well try. I inched closer and closer to the edge, looking out onto a very convincing 100-foot drop. Convincing. Unless it's photorealism, which then tends to lean into uncanny valley. I doubt that's very much the case. You're just being engrossed into a game. And that's unfortunately what happens to a lot of people when they start playing a game. It's kind of like reading a book. It's in your head. My fear of heights started kicking in strong. Closing my eyes, I took a single step off the ledge and nothing happened. I didn't fall, and I was walking on air. I was a god. Virtual reality had won me over, lock, stock, and barrel. Or so I thought. You could literally hear the dun-dun-dun after the or so I thought. There's a reason why you didn't fall in the virtual reality program, and that's because it's not programmed into the game. Like I said, the Vive virtual reality system is actually relatively new in its development, so you're not going to have the capabilities of experiencing certain things. She goes on to say that she started playing QuiVr a little bit more, and then she hit multiplayer mode. And then she started mowing down zombies alongside another real-time player named Big Bro 442. The other players could hear when she spoke, and she could hear when they spoke, and that was the only indication that she was female. Otherwise, all of the avatars looked identical. In between a wave of zombies and demons to shoot down, I was hanging out next to Big Bro 442, waiting for our next wave of attack. Suddenly, Big Bro 442's disembodied helmet faced me dead on, his floating hand approaching my body as he started to virtually rub my chest. "Stop!" I cried. I must have laughed from the embarrassment and the ridiculousness of the situation. Women, after all, are supposed to be cool and take any form of sexual harassment with a laugh. But still I told him to stop. And therein lies the first straw man. I guess I'm kind of doing a dramatic reading of this, but at the same time, this woman is retarded. Look, no one is supposed to be cool with sexual harassment of any form, if you're being sexually harassed. Now, the term sexual harassment has been stretched and molded and used and abused so much in the last couple of years by certain groups that it doesn't hold the same meaning anymore. So this being an indication of what's to come, let me continue on. This goaded him on, and even when I turned away from him, he chased me around, making grabbing and pinching motions near my chest. Emboldened, he even shoved his hand toward my virtual crotch and began rubbing. Now, I am a fan of Markiplier. I'm not saying this is him, forgive me. I am a fan of Markiplier. I have watched him play the Vive. I happen to know that this is not something you can actually do. The controls for the Vive are just like the Wiimotes. They're two basic joysticks with buttons on them. Now, I don't know for certain if this game allows you to move your hands, like when you're going to grab the QuiVr, or the arrow and put it on the bow if it shows your fingers pinching or not. I doubt it does that. But I know for a fact this does not happen. And as for his hand going to her virtual crotch and began rubbing, this is, honestly, out of nowhere, this is always happening. This is so true. I honestly believe this actually happened to this woman. There I was, being virtually groped in a snowy fortress with my brother-in-law and a husband watching. I've seen enough hentai to know where that's going. As it progressed, my joking comments toward Big Bro 442 turned angrier, and were peppered with frustrated obscenities. At first, my brother-in-law and husband laughed along with me. All they could see was the flat computer screen version of the groping. Outside, the total immersion of the QuiVr world. This must have looked pretty funny, and definitely not real. Yes, definitely not real. Let me state those words again, Jordan. Definitely not real. Those three words strung together actually determine this entire fucking article. Remember that little digression I told you about how the 100-foot drop looks so convincing? Yes, because you wanted to put that into that point for this specific reason. That's why you brought it up. Yeah, guess what? The virtual groping feels just as real. Except it's not! You can't feel it! You can't feel it. And she states it just after this, which is so maddening. Of course, you're not physically being touched, which means sexual assault can't happen. Just like you're not actually 100 feet off the ground. And just like in Overwatch, I'm not a 19-year-old girl in a giant mech suit. Or a talking scientifically genius ape with a Tesla cannon. Or an Italian plumber that is in a different world. My high from earlier plummeted. I went from the god who couldn't fall off a ledge to a powerless woman being chased by an avatar named Big Bro 442. Listen, ladies, women, darlings, please, if all it takes is someone trolling you in a game to take you from feeling invincible to feeling like a child, that has nothing to do with the game, that has everything to do with you. That is a mental disorder. I suggest you go to a doctor, because that is some form of depression. Or bipolar, one of the two. What just happened? I hadn't lasted 3 minutes in multiplayer without getting virtually groped. You know what? I didn't last 5 seconds in Call of Duty without getting a headshot and then someone coming up and teabagging me. Was I virtually assaulted? No. Now, this next sentence is very telling. Listen to the verbiage. What's worse is that it felt real. Violating. It felt real. Feels over reals. Once again, we are dealing with this concept that my feelings are more important than actual facts. And in the next portion of this paragraph, she's about to try and justify this bullshit. This sounds ludicrous to anyone who hasn't stood on that virtual reality ledge and looked down. But if you have, you might start to understand. The public virtual chasing and groping happened a full week ago, and I'm still thinking about it. It wasn't public. It was in a game. It was just you and that other person. It was in a game. You weren't being chased. It was in a game. You've been thinking about it for a full week because you wanted to try and make victimhood something you could use as a weapon. Now that the shock has mostly worn off, I'm faced instead with the residual questions about the unbridled misogyny that spawns from gaming anonymity. It's easy to dismiss the most egregious offences as the base actions of a few teenage boys, but I don't think it's as rare as a few bad apples. Of course not, or else you wouldn't be writing this fucking article. Here, let me explain something to you. There have been numerous studies trying to find the correlation between sexism and video games. There has been many articles and studies that have tried to find the correlation between increased violence and video games. And I can tell you this, no one has found any connection. Believe it or not, what they have found, especially in the terms of violence, is that it has gone down. And as for the unbridled misogyny in gaming anonymity, the problem with anonymity is you don't know who the person is. Whether it be text, whether it be chat, you don't know. And on top of not knowing, why do you fucking care? If it was something as simple as just turning the game off. And guess what? I'm sure there's a handy-dandy something or other in multiplayer that allows you to block somebody, which in a game like that makes it so you don't play with them. And yes, the actions of a few teenage boys is always the example that one gives. See, since you didn't establish by the sound of this person's voice, since you've already established that you can communicate, you didn't say he sounded young. You didn't say he sounded old. You didn't say anything at all because you want us to envision someone who is 35 to 40 years old, sitting in his mother's basement, giggling like a schoolgirl, with a neckbeard, his Cheeto-encrusted fingers groping you. Should he tip his fedora as well? How could it be, when my brother-in-law has played multiplayer mode 100 times without incident, but my female voice elicited lewd behavior within minutes? I wish I could explain to you gamer mentality. Not Gamergate mentality, not this straw man of gamers that you're painting, but actual gamer mentality. The best example I can give is playing a game with friends, online. Talking back and forth, we make jokes. I invited a friend of mine that the other players I was playing with didn't really know, and instantaneously they started joking with him in the same way that they joke with me. Without asking if he was okay with those type of jokes, without asking if he was going to be okay with the interpretations of what the jokes mean. They treated him as an equal. When a female gets on a game, we understand that they are on equal playing field with us. True equality. You know, something feminism has been striving for. So we treat her as we would treat everyone else. That statement then becomes misogyny, sexism, harassment, because you can't handle it. As VR becomes increasingly real, how do we decide what crosses the line from an annoyance to an actual assault? Well, here, let me clear that line up for you, because it's very definitely drawn in the sand. Virtual assault is not possible, because the person on the other end of the game cannot physically touch you, cannot hurt you in any way. It's very simple to stop it. All you have to do, take the headset off for a few minutes and go back into multiplayer and find someone else. Assault is a physical probability, a physical proposition of something that happens to someone. There is a line in the sand that cannot be crossed by virtual reality into assault. Eventually we're going to need rules to tame the wild, wild west of virtual reality multiplayer. Or this is going to be yet another space that women do not venture into. Women are allowed, sure, but the big bro 442s of the world will make sure you never want to come back. Jordan, dear, I don't know what to tell you. There is a simple solution to all of this. Now, I read that whole thing, and then I did some investigation. And I'm going to bring this up now, after I've read everything, to show how far these people will go to try and get clicks. I'm going to put the picture up and let you see. I took a screen cap. Big Bro 442 doesn't exist. Now, granted, say Jordan reports Big Bro 442. Okay, gets another report. Big Bro 442 gets another report, and another report, and another report, and yes, they finally ban him from the service. That's a possibility as well. But as of right now, there's no such player as Big Bro 442. I don't know if this article was meant to be hyperbole. I don't know if this article was meant to anger people. But I can tell you this. All of this was in this woman's head. I can't get angry anymore. There's frustration, not anger. I'm frustrated because gamers are still being labelled as these outcasts, even though gaming in itself is a multi-billion-dollar industry. Gamers are still being labelled as trash, and it's not fair. Now, I can go onto YouTube, search up my favourite multiplayer, and add salt to that, and it will pull up dozens upon dozens of videos of people getting salty and getting angry online, getting frustrated. But yet, if I bring up that same game and put harassment, I won't find any. All of these things seem to be there without proof. So this last line, women are allowed, she's talking about gaming, allowed in gaming. But the Big Bro 442s of the world will make sure you never want to come back. Knowing that Big Bro 442 doesn't exist means that she doesn't want to come back. And honestly, I say good riddance. We don't need people like this, like Jordan, to make things up, to make things worse. We already deal with enough as it is. And that's all I really have to say on the subject. So thank you for listening. My name, once again, is Antoine. If you liked what I had to say, please hit like, subscribe, share me around. If you didn't like what I have to say, let me know in the comments. I would love to hear from you. You can follow me on Facebook. I am one of the admins of the Help for the Guildless Facebook page. You can also follow Cole on Twitch, Twitter, and Tumblr. So, with all of this said, I have nothing more to say to you than have a wonderful evening.